All right, so on these slides, I am going to share a variety of key terms relating to fiction. Some of them will be review, when I'm mentioning plot or setting. These are largely terms that you've encountered before and are familiar with. However, it's important for you to know that if you see a highlighted word, that means it is free game for any quiz or test, and I will be asking you to apply these words, right? So I'm going to ask you to identify a protagonist or an antagonist, that sort of thing. So if you need to pause and look anything up or pause and take notes, you just want to make sure that you have complete notes to help you on any future assessments. All right. Okay, so when we are talking about fiction, these are the main subgenres that we are going to discuss or look at. And the way we analyze fiction will actually change depending on the subgenre because there are patterns within each subgenre. So, a novel is a larger work of fictional prose, approximately 40,000 words or more. This is what you usually read. A novella may be new to you. I don't think I heard that word until I was in college. It is a shorter work. It's not as short as a short story, but it's a shorter work of fiction, approximately 40,000 words, 17 to 40. And it was really popular, quite a while ago, between 1850 and 1950. Certainly authors still write novellas. I can think of some great modern novellas, but it's just not something that you encounter often unless you study literature or you're an avid reader of contemporary fiction. A short story. Now, you should probably be familiar with a short story coming through high school. Broadly defined as anywhere between 1,000 and 20,000 words. The modern short story developed in the mid-19th century, largely in part because of growing popularity of magazines, and the short story has evolved, and it can take so many different forms and shapes, and I'm really excited to dive into the short story with you. A short story is even newer than the short story. This is sometimes called flash fiction or microfiction. It's generally not longer than 1,000 words, and this is really an invention of recent decades. So when I said that we interpret or analyze works in different ways, what did I mean by that? Well, the short story may not have an evolved plot like a novel, and knowing that helps us go into it with an eye for different techniques, different literary elements, and same for the short story. So I remember a professor, a creative writing professor, explaining it a little bit like this. And of course, this is from the perspective of creative writing. But he said, you have a short story when you have a scene in mind, like a really strong scene. And a scene is when, time slows down and there's dialogue and you're watching characters interact with each other and you're very present in the moment. And he said, you have a novella when you just have this incredible character or setting in mind, and it's going to take a lot of space for you to fully engage the reader in that character or that setting. And he said, and with the novel, you really know you have a novel in your hands when you are building a world, when you have a whole world. It's not just a scene or a character, but you've got this entire world. And with the short story, it's often very physical. We're moving deep into the character. It's sometimes cerebral. We're just inhabiting thoughts. Sometimes it's inhabiting the body, something physical, sensations within the body, but it's not really a scene. You don't have enough space on the page for a scene. So just knowing these things help us look for different elements within the work. And there's much more to explore here, but that's an overview of some of the differences in reading these subgenres. Okay, so reading fiction, how do we want to get started here? And we are going to develop our skills over the course of the quarter, but this is a great place to start. Get a good dictionary, okay? You are going to encounter words you don't know. This will happen. You want to circle these words on the page, get out your pen. You can look them up, now or later, either way, but don't leave those words behind. Sometimes they can really teach you about what the story is doing. They can even point to the theme. Read attentively, not passively. This is so important. We talked about this in the last lecture. Limit distractions and interruptions. Take a break from social media, obtrusive music. And I don't mean like those nice slow jams that kind of help you relax in reading, but that music that really pulls you out of reading, you don't want that on, right? Television, all of that stuff. You really want to distance yourself from that so you can read attentively. And then annotate. And that's really what this whole lecture is about, taking notes in the margin as you read. Okay, so annotations, or marginalia, as it used to be called, thrived in England during the 16th century as studies of book culture during the rule of Elizabeth I and James I will demonstrate. And then beyond that, annotated books were routinely exchanged among scholars and friends as a social activity throughout the Victorian era. Can you imagine doing that, with your friends as a social activity? You're going to exchange your annotations on books. Pretty nerdy, right? Sounds pretty great to me. But beyond that, the sort of historical aspects of annotating, there are some studies that show that annotation helps significantly with memory, comprehension, and overall understanding of what you read. The thinking behind this is that annotating the text takes effort and essentially forces you to interact with it physically. So rather than just taking the information in and letting it wash over you, you form new pathways in your brain by encoding the text. It's just that simple act of writing your notes in the first place that helps you remember what you read. That's pretty darn cool. Okay, I'm going to stop here and make the rest of these slides a separate video so it isn't too terribly long for you. So stay tuned for a whole lot more about annotating.